Again from DPL Surveillance Equipment. How you guys doing this morning? As you might imagine, I'm wiping down my car. Today is a day where we go to the gym and we try to get in a good workout. A muscle or something, reduces because you've already allowed those muscles to replace. Lots of debt on the consumer level, lots of debt on a corporate and government level. Those things aren't changing right away. So that's, basically the same old story there. But this particular session, I think this particular session is interesting. We're going to focus on politics of all things. Every once in a while, I have to chime in and give my little 2 cents in terms of what's going on in the political arena. And basically, what we have now is a little bit of chaos and confusion. And I'm being facetious in that we actually have a whole lot of chaos and confusion. Before we get into that, let me introduce myself. My name is Monty Henry, owner of DPL Surveillance Equipment. I run a full-service surveillance and security equipment company. We have lifetime guarantees and warranties on all of the products, 24/7, 365, tech sales and customer support. We have the largest inventory of items that not only can you buy, but you can rent and you can lay away as well. And we have a humongous amount of articles, blogs, podcasts, demonstration videos, etc., on the website. Lots of content. So if you guys like to consume content or read and learn and educate yourself like I do, you're going to have a pretty good time checking out all the various articles and such. Whether it's health, whether it's under health and fitness, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's about cryptocurrencies, you name it, we're talking about it probably, or we have written about it, or we blogged about it, or something, made a podcast on it, more likely on the website. So anyway, go there and see what you think and let me know. And if there's something in particular that you want to hear about or read about, whatever, let me know, and we'll take a look at that as well. Also, we're big fans of cryptocurrencies and that Bitcoin. We're firm believers that Bitcoin could very well one day rival the U.S. dollar in terms of it being a reserve currency for the for people who use fiat currencies of the world. So we think that the dollar is on its way out, has completely lost so much value and credibility, and the people are basically citizens are losing faith in the current economic and financial system. And I think it's high time to have an alternative. That's what we believe in, most of us cryptocurrency enthusiasts. We think that, between what the central bankers and the Federal Reserve people are doing, it's high time we get an alternative. And we think Bitcoin looks like it's that type of alternative, mainly because it's decentralized, peer-to-peer. No one can stop it. You possess your own, what we call private keys, and as long as you hold those keys in a Trezor or Ledger Nano wallet, or one of those wallets, no one can take that away from you. Once those private keys in your possession, it's not like the government can go to a bank and have that bank seize your funds or something, or have some stupid credit card company get in the middle of that transaction and so on. I would probably put 5 or 10% of my portfolio, if I were you, in it. And I have Visa, Wells Fargo, Elevon, American Express, at some point you just get tired of the the legacy system and the way it works, and you just want to move on and use another system completely. Okay, so anyway, enough of that soapbox. Oh yeah, before I forget, the shopping cart should be converted, hopefully, maybe within a week, maybe, or sooner, so that we could use Bitcoin and Litecoin and Ethereum at least for shopping. Okay, where Coinbase has issued a plugin, so we should be able to use that plugin to check out in the shopping cart and get your favorite products, inspired gadgets, and check out of the shopping cart. I've added a whole bunch of new state-of-the-art law enforcement grade, lifetime guaranteed and warranted nanny cameras, and we're adding more and more stuff all the time. So look at the cloud-based wireless IP-enabled cameras, that last category, and you're going to see those state-of-the-art products. Now, let's see what else. I can't think of anything else. If I think of something, I'll come back to it. This particular article, I think it's kind of revealing. I just want to preface this article, because a lot of people who are struggling, they want to be successful, they want to be wealthy, they want to be financially independent, but I see a lot of people are under the impression that most, if not all, the people who have a lot of money are very intelligent. But I was reminded by my professor who worked at a community college that I attended, learning about finances, learning about investing, learning about managing money and such. He told us, you guys, there is no direct correlation between wealth and intelligence. So that just reminds me that sometimes, people will get inheritances, people will get money that comes into their hands one way or the other, and everybody else would think that that person is very intelligent. But it may not be the case. That could be one of the most stupid fucking people on the planet, and you won't have any idea that their wealth was basically inherited or something. So having said that, let's get into the article, okay? Let's see. This article is titled, Trump, They're Flipping Like Professional Gymnasts. Again, the article is called Trump, They're Flipping Like Professional Gymnasts. Alan Weisselberg, a longtime Trump Organization CFO, testified and was granted immunity in Cohen probe. Accountant is third longtime confidant of Mr. Trump, known to have provided information in hush money investigation that has implicated the president. Okay. President Trump's financial gatekeeper was granted immunity by federal authorities in New York and testified before a grand jury that he's the third long-time confidant of Mr. Trump, known to have provided information in a legal hush money investigation that has implicated the president. What else we got? Let's see. Alan Weisselberg, who has served for decades as chief financial officer and executive vice president of the Trump Organization, testified several weeks ago in the criminal investigation by federal prosecutors in Manhattan into Michael Cohen, Mr. Trump's former lawyer. People familiar with the matter said. Earlier this week, Mr. Cohen pleaded guilty in Manhattan federal court to 8 criminal charges, including facilitating illegal campaign contributions during the 2016 presidential campaign to pay hush money to 2 women. He said Mr. Trump directed him to make the payments. What else we got here? Mr. Weisselberg was one of the executives who helped reimburse Mr. Cohen through the Trump Organization and the president's personal trust for a $130,000 payment Mr. Cohen made before the 2016 election to Stephanie Clifford, a former adult film actress known as Stormy Daniels, for staying silent over her allegation of a past sexual encounter with Mr. Trump, which he has denied. David Pecker, CEO of the National Enquirer's publisher and a longtime ally who helped protect Mr. Trump's public image for years, also was granted immunity and told federal prosecutors that Mr. Trump had knowledge of Mr. Cohen's payments to women, the Wall Street Journal reported earlier this week. The men represent three pillars that have supported Mr. Trump for decades in financial, legal, and publicity matters. The 71-year-old Mr. Weisselberg has long been a central figure in Mr. Trump's business, a global real estate development, property management, and licensing company. Mr. Weisselberg didn't respond to a request for comment. The journal couldn't determine whether Mr. Weisselberg told prosecutors that Mr. Trump had knowledge of the payments when they were made. A lawyer for Mr. Trump declined to comment. The president has said he found out only later about the payments Mr. Cohen arranged. In a television interview earlier this week, he criticized the Justice Department tactic of flipping defendants in exchange for leniency, saying it almost ought to be illegal. I just want to chime in for a second and add my 2 cents. Weisselberg did work for Fred Donald Trump's father. Fred, created this empire. Probably was the actual brains, obviously, behind making this organization what it is today. And unfortunately, for a lot of you business owners who are thinking about passing down your companies and the things that you work so hard for, you build up these companies, they become, significant, giving you the financial independence, giving you a great deal of success or something, and then you come to the point where you want to take a lesser role and start enjoying, vacations and doing less of the day-to-day operations, and you would turn over, that to your sons and daughters and siblings or whatever. Be careful, because some of these children, like we're finding out with Donald Trump, unfortunately could very well tarnish a lot of the goodwill and image that you work so hard to establish, that reputation that took you 10, 20, 30 years to develop and nurture and grow, could be destroyed very, very quickly, as we're starting to see with the Trump organization. So you may want to consider whether or not these people actually should have a day-to-day hands-on role, or whether or not they should just be given enough money to stay the fuck away from that corporation or that empire that you build, mainly because you don't want these idiots like Donald Trump to ruin everything in one fell swoop when it took you decades to build it. So just my cautionary advice to you guys. Where else are we here? Let's see. Mr. Weisselberg was one of the executives who helped reimburse Mr. Cohen through the Trump Organization and the President's Personal Trust for a $130,000 payment Mr. Cohen made before the 2016 election to Stephanie Clifford, a former adult female actress known as Stormy Daniels, for staying silent over her allegation of a past sexual encounter with Mr. Trump, which he has denied. Let me see. I'm sorry. Yeah, I read that part. It remains unclear whether the information the three men had provided to the federal investigation was limited to prosecutors' efforts that led to Mr. Cohen's guilty plea, or whether it will aid in the probe going forward. The investigation by the Manhattan U.S. Attorney General's office is continuing, according to a person familiar with the matter. Some of the president's allies argue that if the information was used solely in pursuit of Mr. Cohen, the political fallout and legal risks for the president may subside. Still, this week's events alarmed some members of Mr. Trump's orbit. Rudy Giuliani, a lawyer for Mr. Trump, said he wasn't aware that Mr. Weisselberg had been granted immunity and didn't know whether the president had knowledge of it. Even at the Trump Organization, where fewer than 30 employees work on the 26th floor of the Trump Tower alongside Mr. Weisselberg, the revelation that the CFO had been granted immunity from prosecutors surprised many executives, according to a person familiar with the matter. Well, I guess a lot of this just goes to show. Just 1 second, got a little bit of noise. A lot of this goes to show when the prosecutors call these witnesses, look like they're doing a very good job of making sure that the whole world doesn't know exactly what's going on, who's testifying, and where they're testifying to, and how much information, how much pressure can be exerted on these witnesses. Let's see, this is a quotation. Is there a reason to be concerned and pay very close attention and hope that there's really good lawyering going on? Absolutely, one person close to the White House said. Okay, that doesn't make any difference, or any difference at all, that particular statement. Another person close to the White House described the president as distracted by the wall-to-wall cable news coverage of the developments involving Mr. Cohen and Paul Manafort, his former campaign chairman, who was convicted by a federal jury on 8 counts of fraud Tuesday. Got a little bit of noise going on again. I'm gonna, try and let this car leave. I think a lot of the working people are hopefully getting out and going to work, or where the fuck they go in the morning. We'll see what happens. Just 1 second here. We'll get back to it. Okay, Mr. Trump, the person said, is alternating between anger and a surprising state of calm in the face of cascading reports about legal troubles involving his associates. So Donald Trump, obviously, and I think we don't want to take this for granted, that he's probably not able to concentrate as much as he would like to on destroying everything that Obama was trying to accomplish, and the people in that administration, and maybe administrations before that. So, yeah, this is throwing a little bit of a wrench into Donald Trump's dismantling of everything that we've accomplished. Environmental rules and regulations to restrict what the banks are doing to us every day. So we're slowing him down just a little bit, and I think he's getting upset. Donald Trump, as I like to say, Donald Duck. On Thursday, the president showed up unexpectedly at a birthday party for Sarah Sanders, Stephen Miller, and Lawrence Kudlow, held on a White House patio, where aides cheered and applauded him. In some ways, the president relishes conflict. Another person close to the president said he enjoys the battle. Given the Justice Department's long-standing determination that sitting presidents can't be indicted, investigators would face uncharted territory if they amassed evidence that the president committed a crime, legal experts say. Congress, which has the power to impeach the president, could ask for evidence from the Justice Department And prosecutors could also use the evidence to pursue other individuals. Former federal prosecutor said prosecutors aren't precluded from charging someone after he is no longer president. So it looks like, as far as I can tell, Donald Trump could face major issues for his presidency while he's in office, while he's sitting. And at the same time, according to what I'm reading, this could also extend to, obviously, when he's a citizen, a private citizen. So I think Donald Trump is probably thinking in the back of his mind, I need to do everything imaginable to make sure that I pardon as many people as possible, and that as much as possible, I want to be pardoned as well. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure if Donald Trump had his way, he would probably flip on himself so that his presidential image or presidential persona could testify or somehow get leniency for giving up information on the private Donald Trump. Anyway, that's a version of sick humor from me. That probably doesn't make sense, but I like it. I'm having fun with this. Let's see, where else we have here. Hey, how you doing? Federal prosecutors in Manhattan could also share their evidence with Special Counsel Robert Mueller, who is leading an investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election and whether the Kremlin colluded with the Trump Organization. Mr. Trump and the Kremlin have denied wrongdoing. Mr. Mueller's remit gives him the leeway to pursue any matters that arise from his investigation. The probe of Mr. Cohen started in part with a referral from Mr. Mueller's office that raises the prospect that Mr. Mueller could incorporate findings from the Manhattan probe into any report he submits to the Deputy Attorney General about his investigation's conclusions related to Mr. Trump, legal experts say. So as far as I can tell, this really implies that since Robert Mueller has initiated this investigation, that wherever it leads, he could very well use that same information and turn it over to other federal agencies, including the IRS, including the Justice Department, including Deputy Attorney General's office, or whoever may want to use that information. So that's the impression that I get. Could be wrong, but it looks like a lot of agencies are going to want to take advantage of getting access to Robert Mueller's findings. Mr. Weisselberg's ties to the Trump family date to the 1980s when he worked for Mr. Trump's father, Fred. He also serves as a treasurer of the Trump administration, which has been accused in a lawsuit by the New York Attorney General's office of repeatedly violating laws governing charities. The foundation has denied wrongdoing. The accountant was at Mr. Trump's side when he faced bankruptcy in the 1990s. Mr. Trump later credited the CFO in one of his books as one of the toughest people in business when it comes to money, who did whatever was necessary to protect the bottom line. Mr. Trump has also praised Mr. Weisselberg as a loyal employee whose advice he relied on for everything from finances to carpet swatches. I could bet you right now, Mr. Weisselberg doesn't want Donald Trump to mention his name in associating in any manner in terms of what the day-to-day operations of that organization were all about. Mainly because when you're under investigation and you've already testified and given immunity, people are already aware of a whole lot of things that you did with that organization, and they're just waiting to be able to use that information. And then when Donald Trump goes on record talking about how extensive your decision-making was, that just adds more fuel to the fire. So Mr. Weisselberg probably wished Donald Trump would shut up and not say anything else about Mr. Weisselberg's responsibilities. I'm pretty sure. Last year, Mr. Weisselberg arranged for the Trump organization to reimburse Mr. Cohen, who had in October 2016 arranged a $130,000 payment to Ms. Clifford, the former adult film actress who claimed she had sex with Mr. Trump a decade earlier in exchange for her silence about the alleged affair. A person familiar with Mr. Weisselberg's thinking said he didn't know when he agreed in January 2017 to a $35,000 monthly retainer from Mr. Cohen that it was intended to reimburse him for his payment to Ms. Clifford. Prosecutors said Trump Organization executives approved the reimbursement through phony invoices from Mr. Cohen and accounted for the payments as legal expenses, even though the monthly invoices were not in connection with any legal services he provided. Now, I think this is a significant issue right here, mainly because, see, a lot of us, when we do our taxes, when we run our businesses, we try to comply with the IRS's rules and regulations. Okay, federal and state agencies continually remind us, common people, that we have to state things and be held accountable and risk going to jail or prison for making up invoices and declaring one thing and saying and doing something different with our monies. But according to this article here, we get a chance to see that the President of the United States and the way he runs his business is totally different. So it looks like he gets an exemption for making up invoices and putting arbitrary dollar amounts on certain forms or whatever and submitting that to the IRS. So if the IRS, if you're listening or reading these articles and such, I think you better figure out how to use this as evidence that these people are basically laughing right in your guys' faces and making a mockery out of U.S. Tax laws. And let this be a lesson to you citizens outside the United States that obviously you don't have to comply. You just make up invoices. You just do what you want to do, and you can say, well, the President of the United States can do it. I can do it as well. I think that's the way it works, right? This is an endorsement, obviously, by Donald Trump and his organization that you can do phony invoices. You can make up and gross out receipts according to their own terminology, which I'll get to in a second. Alan Weisselberg, longtime Trump organization. Okay, where else are we? Let's see, we covered that part. I'm going to show you guys how to get away with covering up financial deeds according to the Trump methodology. Let's see. In January 2017, executives at the Trump organization grossed up, for tax purposes, Mr. Cohen's requested reimbursement to $360,000 and added a $60,000 bonus, charging documents filed Tuesday said. The next month, one executive at the company asked another executive to pay Mr. Cohen's monthly retainer from the trust and to post to legal expenses, according to the document. So it looks like these idiots at the Trump organization are just having a field day in terms of how they report these numbers. They wanted to pay out, it looks like $60,000, and they embedded that in a transaction that was for $360,000 to cover up the initial $60,000 as a bonus. And this was, I think this was used to reimburse Michael Cohen. Moving right along, Mr. Weisselberg isn't named in the charging documents, but was one of the executives, according to a person familiar with the matter. Last month, a lawyer for Mr. Cohen released an audio recording of a September 2016 conversation between Messrs. Trump and Cohen in which the two men discussed buying the rights to former Playboy playmate Karen McDougal's story. In the recording, which federal investigators reviewed, Mr. Cohen said he would set up a company to make the payment, adding, "I've spoken with Alan Wasserberg about how to set the whole thing up before Mr. Trump interrupted him." It isn't clear whether Mr. Cohen actually spoke with Mr. Wasserberg about the plans to buy the rights to Miss McDougal's story. Ultimately, American Media Incorporated, the National Enquirer publisher run by Mr. Pecker, which had purchased those rights a month earlier, declined to sell the rights to Mr. Cohen. So it looks like Mr. Pecker, who runs the American Media Company, responsible for burying that story, was indeed granted immunity so that he could testify and not worry about repercussions. But you can bet that someone, particularly Robert Mueller, determined in advance that his testimony and his words were such good information that it was worth the risk of granting him immunity. So it looks like a number of people very close to Trump are definitely flipping like professional gymnasts. Those are my words. And I think we're having a field day with this information. This is better than any soap opera that you could imagine. And if it weren't so sad, because it's the President of the United States, and it's because the United States government is supposed to be like a formidable superpower with intelligent, competent people. But I think, as we can see, as I pointed out earlier, just because you give people a little bit of money and a little bit of prestige and fancy titles, doesn't mean much. You can only dress up a pig so much and put lipstick on it, but it's still a pig. Trust me. But karma is a bitch. California wildfires are raging. People are dying. Animals are dying. Lots of things are going on. A lot of devastation going on in California, for instance. Jerry Brown and a number of officials in California, for instance, are trying to get Trump to be responsible and grant some federal assistance, emergency assistance money, which he refuses to have anything to do with. So karma's a bitch. I think a lot of this shit is coming back on him. And anyway, I want to pass this story along to you guys and let you see for yourself that this idiot is self-imploding, and we couldn't have more laughs. Matter of fact, I was looking at Saturday Night Live's skits about him, and it is ridiculous. You know, whenever you want to humor yourself, listen to Donald Trump, look at Saturday Night Live, tune into what's going on in Washington, and you will have the time of your life. I think Barack Obama's presidency was downright boring as compared to the fiasco that is the Trump administration. Anyway, I'm going to sign off. As I like to say at the conclusion of every podcast, you guys be safe out there. Keep your eyes and ears open. Have a good day. Thanks. Bye.